Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to the podcast. I've got a fantastic guest for us today, Andy Halko, and he's a founder and CEO. He's written a book, he's speaker, and I'm really happy to have him on to talk about his career and influence and how other people can build careers around influence, either public speaking, writing, social media, and really happy to have him on. Andy, welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you and obviously your audience and a little bit about my background, what I've done.
Yeah, and briefly introduce yourself, and we will dive into the questions.
Yeah, I'm Andy Halko. I actually started my business 23 years ago at the age of 22. So I've been doing it for just a little bit. And I started with a technical background, a real interest in creativity, and then got a business degree. And so I started a marketing agency where we really focused on digital and how do we take technology and bridge that with creativity. And over the 23 years, we've evolved and reinvented many times just because over that period of time you have to. And today, we're really bridging the gap between customer centricity and AI. And how do you really leverage AI to improve your growth, but make sure you don't lose sight of your customer as the most important thing to understand in your business.
Oh, interesting. And we'll start it off because it's going to be focused on the customer. So, talk about AI, buyer psychology, and the future of customer understanding.
Yeah, so for years, companies like mine and many others use personas. You might be familiar with them. A lot of times in the past, it's been a slide and a deck that companies keep where there's a stock image and maybe 35 to 65 and a couple of different factors. And so today with AI, what we do have the ability to do is to take that to a whole new level, to reinvent it, and we call them twins instead of personas. And what twins are, they're really your target audience recreated with AI and then given the ability to interact with them, to ask them questions. What message would get me to take action here? What do you think of this landing page? Or what do you think of this ad? What is it that's keeping you up at night? They become active participants in helping you form your product, form your marketing, your sales, your customer service. And so the old days of a static persona that just gave some data and didn't really truly help you improve how you interacted with customers,
Mm.
that's gone. And now there are these twins created through AI that really make them an active participant in improving everything you do across the company.
Interesting. And so, to piggyback onto that idea, is with because again, your central thesis is the customer, and you say be clear on the customer, and that's the real competitive advantage. One dilemma that really strikes to me is everybody's focused down, niche down. But then what happens if you're like for example, Microsoft, they're like the whatever the operating system, and then so they miss search, and they miss the smartphone, they miss social media, and they missed or they got back into the cloud. So if you're if you're just like narrow minded and you're blinded to all these innovations, how do you distinguish between missing out on the next big thing and versus focus?
I think that's one of the things about understanding your customer. And just to step back, yes, my central thesis, my personal philosophy is that if you know your customer, your buyer, your audience better than anybody else, that is the secret sauce because understanding who is going to buy from you helps drive the right features in a product or the right features in a service. It drives marketing that actually gets interest and compels people to move forward. If you don't know your customer really well, you will struggle in sales. And so my belief is companies that center their business around their buyer, really understand them and connect with them are more successful. And
Mm,
so, to your point of innovation and making sure that you stay up with what is the next trend, that is a direct correlation to understanding your buyer and what their shifting trends are, their shifting needs are. I think those companies that have missed out on trends probably weren't close enough to the buyer to say, this is what they're changing how they like and how they want to interact with people, or these are the pains that they're feeling today, or what they're motivated by. And so I really think it doesn't matter how big you are, doesn't matter whether you're narrow or wide,
mm.
the same thing applies, is that you have to understand your target audience.
Yeah. Yeah. And then a follow-up question I have for you is Apple did this very well when Steve Jobs came back, is they identified a market and a need before their customers realized it, because they came out with the iPod and then the iPhone, and all of a sudden now you've got almost the whole world. You can't function without a smartphone. How do you stay on top of that, because you're identifying something that even your customer base doesn't even know they want or need?
I think that humans, it's still about emotion and need and psychology, right? And so Apple steps back and says people have this desire to connect. Their attention spans are becoming shorter. They want to be able to interact with people even when they're not tethered to their house, right? Whatever these things are, they're core central tenets of who we are as humans, our motivations, our pains. And what they really were good at is saying, okay, let me invent something that doesn't exist, that still, resonates with these needs or solves them. And I think that's the true innovation. It's one thing to take something you have currently and say, okay, I understand my customer, let me match it with you. It is definitely a whole nother thing to say, here's how humans think. Let me come up with something brand new that will solve for these things that I know they want.
Yeah. Interesting. Then, so a lot of the guests just before you, he was talking about how most marketing strategies are 90% plus are they miss the mark. And he was talking about how the search is going to be dominated by large language models versus search engines. So what should modern companies be doing instead to position themselves with AI and chatbots and avatars, etc.?
I think one of the biggest things that I have been talking about lately is that we are now in a new age of the hyper informed buyer and customer. They do not come to us when they're looking to purchase something, especially if it's a more involved purchase, whether it's related to medical procedures, it's software, whatever it is. They're coming to the door so knowledgeable because they can go into any of these AI engines and they can ask for a comparison. Tell me who is the best. Tell me why they're the best. Show me the last 10 reviews. Give me a chart that shows me scoring 1 to 5 in these 6 categories. 2 years ago, buyers would come to companies, they would come to products or services, maybe with a decent amount of knowledge. They had what you put on your website, maybe they read a couple of reviews. Now they're just coming with so much more understanding, and anything you say they can real time validate whether it's true or not. And so for me in marketing and sales and customer service, I think about that is that we have to change to understand that we're not dealing with folks that necessarily need as much education or are going to be convinced or oversold. They're coming to the door just with so much more. And I think now is the time that every business, every leader needs to rethink that, associate to the fact that they are just getting folks that are 99% understanding of something before they even talk to them.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially the Gen Z and Gen Alphas, they're digitally native, like they know how to use these tools, and a lot of them are starting their companies and starting SaaS companies. What is going to separate the winners? Because we're on entrepreneurship podcast, looking inside the minds of 200 plus SaaS founders. What separates the cream from the rest of the pack?
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but obviously I believe it is that customer knowledge. You mentioned interviewing past founders. I've interviewed over 200 founders myself on a podcast. And the one thing that I kept hearing over and over were the ones that were most successful really had an intimate relation with the people that they were trying to sell to, especially the founders in that startup stage, that it wasn't, I've got an idea, I'm going to build a product and then I'm going to go out there and sell it. It was founders that almost saw it as a partnership with their audience. Is that I've got an idea, let me go talk to some people and validate it. Okay, now let me create some sort of prototype and I'm going to put it in front of them. I'm going to have them play with it and they're going to give me feedback and I'm going to change my idea based off of what they tell me. And then I'm going to create the next iteration and go back to them. And so for me, when I did those interviews, there were definitely two camps. The ones that saw it as this intimate relationship with the customers, lots of communication, agile evolution with them, and those that were egotistical about their ideas, that were champion what they thought was great and what they thought was best. And of those two camps, it was always the ones that treated their audience like an active participant that seemed to be just growing at a game changing pace. And I don't think no matter what technology changes or comes in new, that tenant will change. It will always be the same.
Interesting. The other thing is you mentioned leadership and growth in your in previous response, and a lot of, again, the younger generation, they don't really trust leaders, and a lot, again, a lot of them are starting their own companies, going out to work on their own. They don't want a job. So why is clarity the most underrated skill in leadership and growth, and how can leaders develop it?
Yeah, clarity. I think being able to articulate what you think and your vision very clearly is important. One of the things that I talked about for many years was creating a crystal clear vision for your team, for your customers, for your investors. Is that it's one thing as entrepreneurs, we obsess about this stuff. We think about it in the shower, we're thinking about it in the car. It's just in our blood. And then what I think ends up happening is that we struggle to take that same passion, which is full of nuance, and package it in a simple, articulate, clear way for the people that are going to work with us, that we need to get them on the bus to try and have the same passion to accomplish goals. And so what I've seen over the years is a lot of founders that can't communicate that well. And so they have teams that just aren't headed in the same direction as they are, or aren't feeling the same level of passion. Customers and buyers that don't understand what they really do or the big vision. Same thing with investors. And I really think there is something to being able to take that chaos that's in any entrepreneur or leader's head and distilling it down to something that really resonates and compels with your internal team and external stakeholders.
Wow. Yeah, very fascinating. I love that. I know, I think that's probably one of the, because people were talking about trust and integrity and all, but I think that's summing it up. When people come to work with you, who do you attract? What are they looking to accomplish, achieve? What are they frustrated, fed up with to come to work with you?
Yeah, it's really folks that are looking to grow and know that is done by, again, understanding the target audience to a level that is way beyond any of their competitors, and that they really can shift their mindset to being buyer centric versus company centric, where they're egotistical about who they are, solution centric, where they only care about features and integrations, whether they get used by the customer or not. And we really help companies, I think, if they are in that company or solution mindset, shift to the customer centric mindset and then develop strategies to leverage that for growth through marketing and sales. And so it really is these great leaders that are growth minded and looking for change, especially around narrowing down and understanding their audience.
How can people connect with you and learn more from you and work with you?
Yeah, I think go check my book out on Amazon, The Buyer-Centric Operating System. Obviously, I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in that, and it takes the 23 years that I've been in business and puts a lot of my core philosophies together. And if you want, you can go check out andyhalko.com, which has links to my book, product, company, videos that I do on these topics. Definitely either of those is a great path.
Yeah. Excellent. I really enjoyed this conversation and keep up the great work.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And I hope everybody got something good out of it.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks for coming on.